I feel really bad. All right, when I found out she was moving to Portland, my first response was, "You're gonna present a PDXS, right?" And she said gracefully, "Yes." So Rachel has I should probably get a better list of all the things I wanted to say. A company called, what company is it called again? Mockingjay? She'll do the intros. Rachel's awesome. She's going to talk about CSS animations tonight, and I am excited to see it. And give us a second as we transition over. But first, let's welcome Rachel. Sounds good.
Do we have any feedback?
We do not.
How's the sibilance? Sounds pretty good. Yeah, I do. Could you sit it down there for me?
I'll be your
You know, the fun thing about speaking on the road is I have all these cute outfits, and only a couple of them have belts. And so sometimes I'll be wearing one, and I'll be like, oh, shoot, I shouldn't have worn this to present today, because I end up carrying this little thing in my hands. And it's very frustrating. So anyway, hi there. I'm Rachel Nabors. And this talk... How's that? No, that's too far away. No, that's too close. I'll figure it out. Figure it out. When it's not... There we go. Can you hear me all right? All right. Okay. We're going to roll with it. We're going to try not to kill ourselves here. All right. Let's get past that pesky title slide. Oh. So I'm Rachel Nabors. I used to make comics for a living way back in the glorious days of 2007 and, well, 2006. I was a world-renowned cartoonist you probably never heard of before because my major market was teenage girls. I made comics for a website called girl.com. That's girl with a U. It has traded hands many times since then, and the content is not what it used to be. But every week there was a new Rachel the Great comic. And this little guy right here is my sidekick, Tuna. And I dare say he was more popular than my character was, as all the screaming fangirls to this day remember him very well. He has a following, and he'll be a little teacher's assistant today. So anyway, I was making comics, but has anyone here in the audience made comics for a living? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Comics are very hard to make a profit at. Teenage girls don't have credit cards to buy things online, and to get things into Hot Topics requires all kinds of weird orders. Anyway, point is, it's not a long-term income potential strategy. And this is not a solid mic. There we go. So, point is, I needed jaw surgery. I needed health insurance. I had to get a real job. I looked at my skill set and I said, what can I possibly do that people will pay me money for? Well, I keep making these websites and things to promote my comics. Maybe somebody would pay me to do that. So how many of you out there are web developers? Raise your hands. Okay, how many of you are web designers? How many of you are both? Okay, how many of you are neither of those things? Well, brave of you to come out. Good to see you, good to see you, always spreading the gospel. You can make a lot of money. Just telling you guys, there's money to be had in them hills. So anyway, I got into front-end development and I haven't looked back since. Except recently, I have looked back. And you know what? My little clicker is just, oh wait, that's the wrong one. How did you do that? All right, this one works. Okay, so up until around January of this year, last year I quit my job and I said, I'm going to just travel around and talk about all these cool things that I can do with CSS. I'd always wanted to one day take my comic and make a cartoon out of it, but after a while it was just like, I can't learn Flash for that. Nobody wants Flash anymore. I would just kiss goodbye all of my dreams of being a cartoonist, a real cartoonist and animator. I will just become a front-end developer and make lots of money that way. Maybe learn some Ruby, you know, roll around to my retirement account. And then last year, I realized, wait a minute, people like this cool stuff that I'm doing with CSS, where I'm telling these cool stories and doing lots of things that we used to only be able to do with Flash and using CSS to do them. People were really getting excited about it while I was on the trail. And I realized I was just totally bored at my day job and wanted to go back to writing and working on my examples all the time. So I was like, quit day job, do this. Somebody's going to hire me. And I will ride out on a pony and be like an awesome animator person. It didn't work. Turns out HR doesn't know how to justify a person with the skills that I have when they really just need someone who does Angular JS. But it's coming. The day is coming. In the meantime, I'm happy to shop out my powers that be at my company, Tin Magpie, which is tinmagpie.com. I know none of you guys are here in a position to hire consultants, but if you should know somebody who does need a crazy CSS animator slash digital storyteller, you know where to come. Moving along, that's what I'm doing now. Today, that's enough about me. Today, we're going to talk more about CSS and less about me. We're going to move forward a couple of assumptions. Number one, we're using Chrome. These animations will work in all recent browsers, plus IE 11 and 10. Opera Mobile is an issue, but that's another story for another day. The only prefix you need to worry about is using WebKit. We won't be using any prefixes today because I'm using this thing called Prefix Free to handle all of them. This is a lovely little bit of JavaScript from Livaroo. Everyone has their different favorite JavaScript auto prefixer. There is one even called auto prefixer, which you can use. Point is, this thing goes in, checks out your CSS, finds everything that could possibly need a vendor prefix for that particular browser, scrapes it, adds the vendor prefixes, and injects it back in the head. So I don't actually recommend that for production work, though, because it's sometimes glitchy. About 1 out of every 20 refreshes, it'll just totally work on you. So I recommend using something like Sass to handle your vendor prefixes, for which I have made a lovely little plugin called Animation Studio, which takes a lot of the backbreaking labor out of some of the things I'll be showing you today. There we go. Now we've got that, we can move on to the pretty pictures. I like looking at my pictures. So this picture I took on one of those wonderful interview things I did last year. I actually got to go to the Disney Family Museum, and this is a photograph, and I'm sorry for all the weird lights. They had a lot of LCDs in that dark room. It made it horrible for taking photos, but you can get an idea that this is one of the very first storyboards ever created. And storyboards, who uses storyboards today? You're gonna need them. So whenever you're working with animation, whenever you're working with anything that involves time and interaction, you need a way to show that to people. Specifically, you need a way to show it to the implementers, the developers, or your animators, as it were, and the storymen, the designers, the marketing people, the UXers who are working on the look and the feel. You need some common lingo between them, some visual way to say, I want this to happen 1.1 seconds in, so that you can have those discussions and you won't be like, what the hell is this when it comes back to you? That happens all the time. And it used to happen all the time in animation. Back in the beginning of the animation industry, which happened right around like 1910, 1920, just before the whole depression set in, conveniently, animation was going through a period of time, much like the period of time we're experiencing in front-end development right now. Everyone was really hot for animators because they could make cute little bumpers that they could put them in cinemas and play them in show reels and things. Everybody would go to the cinema and they'd watch some cartoons and watch some movies, and it was all bundled together and it was fun, right? So animation was a gold rush, and Disney was one of the big studios that came from all of this, and it worked. He worked so hard to grind the competition out. He was the Steve Jobs of his day, really, when you think about it. He wasn't a great animator. He had animators working for him who made Mickey Mouse and the cool tools we're going to look at. Same way Steve Jobs didn't actually build the Macintosh. But there is a whole empire and a whole lot of marketing that went on there and a whole lot of dick moves that he cornered. But the point was, up until Snow White, everyone who'd been doing cartoons had been doing them as tiny little pieces, just shipping out like 2-minute, 5-minute things. They were just supposed to entertain. They weren't supposed to engage. Nobody imagined that you could make a movie, a film, that people would sit down for an hour and a half, even an hour, and just watch a cartoon. That was unheard of. But Walt knew it could be done. He had this idea, and he was like, I can make that happen. And everybody laughed, and he totally proved them wrong. And look at where Disney is now. You know the rest. But the point is, up until that point, everyone in his studio had been working separately. They'd crawl off into their own little corners, work on these different pieces, and they'd come back and say, oh, I got a 3-minute gag. Oh, that's great. I got a 5-minute gag. We over here did that one. Oh, that's great. Let's do this. Does that sound familiar to you guys? It sounds a lot like your workflow. Yeah, I got the email part done here. Yeah, and we got the part with the items list done here. There was no connection. There was no glue between these parts. How could you tell how the dancing sequence with Snow White and the dwarves was supposed to segue into a vista of a mountain view? You couldn't just have them all working on in different areas. They'd go off model. They'd come back with these things that were completely out of scope or taking too long or running too short. So they created this invention. Disney came up with this thing called the storyboard. It was nothing more than a corkboard with pages stuck to it, just like this. Once they started using corkboards, they were able to, the storymen would get together in a room and be like, yes, and then the dwarves should frolic here, and it should segue into a vista. Let's put that down, and somebody would draw and staple them up. And they'd pick up the corkboard, haul it over into the animation studio room where the animators were, plop it down and say, work on this one, it should run this long. And they'd leave them alone, and it worked. And that is how they were able to make 100 and I don't know how many minutes worth of material all come together and stay on model and flow perfectly. And you can't tell that there were hundreds of different people animating all these different scenes because it all looks so fluid and seamless and similar. Storyboards. So there, I may not have sold you on storyboards yet, but I will. Oh yeah, so storyboard is so darn useful that film uses it now. Yes, the very people who laughed at Disney's great folly, as it was considered in the day, ended up using storyboards themselves. No longer was it some director standing in a field shouting that he wanted it more this way, more that way. It became very much more designed by committee, in a good way, though. The writers had more of a control over how things should feel. They got direct feedback from cinematographers there in the room for them. So now you see that storyboards are used in gaming, they're used in film, they're used in pretty much anything where time and movement and storytelling come together. And I think that the web development community could take a leaf from that book. So let's take a look at a storyboard I made recently. I told you about that one talk I gave in 2012 that made me decide I want to do this for a living. That was for CSS DevConf, and this is what I made for them. Actually, I totally like, you hang on there, mister. I want to show them the storyboard first, because the storyboard's so cool, guys. You don't go anywhere, Micah. All right, so the storyboard, and look, I got a laser pointer on this thing. Isn't it cool? So over here, you can see that we got this little loading sign, and when it's loaded, this little rope comes down, it swings, and when you click on it, you know, Tuna will come. Tuna, there he is, look at him. He comes walking out, he sits down, he describes a three-dimensional room in this two-dimensional space, and as you can see, I've got the times on all of these, because I was listening to the music I set it to. I promised them that I could make them an animated music video with CSS and HTML5 audio. And I didn't think they'd take me up on it. And then 2 months before the conference, they're like, yeah, we'll totally fly out to Hawaii to do that. And I was just like, free trip to Hawaii? I gotta spend Strata Gold. I know it's theoretically possible. Let me make this happen. So I spent a lot of time listening to music and putting together this storyboard. And I've even got more details when you focus in. You know, Tuna sets up sound and music drops, Tuna smiles, etc. I've got some details written there. You could probably need a more complicated one to communicate with people who aren't you. Just putting that out there. All right. And go. And it loops indefinitely. Wait a minute, what the? It is actually. It is a bit like NyanCat. I even have a version I did of NyanCat. Just making sure that the Google Hangouts didn't get closed with that. All right. Sweet. All right, so that's how that music video came. I couldn't have done that music video without that storyboard, simply because there's way too much happening at specific different times. There's no way to ad-lib this. It's down to a science. You've got to line up those different transitions and those different animations so that they happen on a dime. So storyboards in the end, they save you time because everybody knows where they're working on a bigger project. They aren't off in a hole working on something, coming back and finding out that it deeply disappointed the other half of the community. They help you figure out timing, which is so useful when you're writing your CSS and your JavaScript. They give you a bird's eye view of a project you're working on, which I don't know about you guys, but I've always had problems with getting the bigger picture when I've been working in-house. And it definitely lets you break a project down better to distribute amongst teams. So let's talk about actually animating that stuff. It all looked pretty cool, but let me show you what I actually used to make that come together. First of all, the walk cycle. Now, the walk cycle is the first thing that any good character, you'll notice that these are all different pictures of Tuna in motion. That's him walking. These are taken from the major sprite that I use for all of my fun little tunas doing something across the screen projects. Walk cycles are a bitch. It's the first thing you spend your first year on when you're in animation school. Traditional animation school. I'm sure that they make you spend your first year. Leanne in the front here. She's a 3D animator, so I know she's like, not me. But I have to qualify this. In traditional animation, in two-dimensional animation, they make you spend your first year. I know this not because I ever went to animation school. That would be a waste of money, but because I know the people who go to animation school, and I hear them lamenting. First you're like, yeah, I'm going to do a walk cycle, this will be great, and then you realize it's like 24 different drawings of the same bloody thing, and there's nothing creative or inventive or cool about it, and it's a lot of keyframes with in-betweens, and in-betweeners go nowhere, and nobody gets paid to do walk cycles unless they live in a third world country. That's because you can't pay people enough to do this sort of thing in a first world country. And anyway, walk cycles. I had to do them. And I'm like, I'm never doing this again. Gonna hire people to do my work for me in the future. I'll just write the code. No, this one doesn't need sound. I'm sorry. It's just the wrong YouTube video. I'm going to show you a walk cycle from master animator Stephen Gordon. And did anybody here watch X-Men Evolution? Yay! I love you guys! Love you! Some of you may have watched Swan Princess if you have small children, or something. Oh no, I'm sorry. He hasn't actually done a lot of stuff that's very prestigious. He did rotoscoping back in the day of the Lord of the Rings cartoon. Yeah, that's where he got started, and he also did, I think, a lot of the dance sequences in Pool World, which, yeah, so Hollywood. He's very good at that. But X-Men Evolution, I think, was one of his best pieces. He's really good at character art, and I asked him, like, Steven, my man, you did some really cool walk cycles, because he wanted every one of the characters in this series to feel different. He didn't want them all to be like, I'm walking across the screen now. So he made different walk cycles for each of them that he sent to the Korean animators. It's like when Rogue walks, she's a goth girl, she's stomping. And Jean, she's kind of preppy, so she's more like this. So he made sure that they had these reference materials so they'd get that movement right. And this is one of them. I just want to show you what a walk cycle looks like. There's nothing really special about it. Those are mostly keyframes. That's why it doesn't look very smooth. All right. And you can do it with CSS, provided you have all the drawings. Let me show you how you can take that sprite and create a walk cycle with it. Now's the part where I get to bend over and do a lot of code. So as you can see, we've got a div class of tuna over meow. There we go. Ba-boom. It's legible-ish. Let me move it to the other side, though, so that you guys can totes read it over my back. There you go. That's better. So the most important thing that's happening here is that I can totally point to this. Tuna's got this little animation block, and it calls walk cycle, which is defined down here. Keyframes walk cycle. It's got a 0% declaration, which is where you want it to start, and a 100% declaration, which is where you want it to end. As you can see, I'm declaring a background position of 0, 0, and it ends with this really weird negative number because I didn't quite measure the sprite perfectly. that it should be 2400. I'm 9 pixels off, so sue me. This is why I eventually automated everything to export perfectly from Photoshop, so I wouldn't have to like scooch things around by hand anymore. Now, the background, that background that's being moved around there, what is that background? This is that background. It's that gigantic image. And so as you can see, we start with it over here, and we move the background to come all the way down to this one. We position it negatively. All right. So let's see how this all happens. I showed you how the background position works. I showed you the sprite. Let's break that part down here. So we call the animation walk cycle. We tell it we want it to run from 0 to 100% every second, and we want it to do it forever. And we use a special timing function called steps, and we give it a number 12, which is how many steps we want it to go through. Now, transition, how many people you guys have fooled around with transitions and timing functions? All right, the rest of you are noobs. So here's what happens if you use linear. Linear is a constant rate of change. It does not change. Look at that. Is it kind of familiar? It reminds you of the very earliest attempts at animation that people used to make when, you know, they charge you a quarter and poke your eyes through a little machine. That's kind of it. It's also making me dizzy. So anyway, what steps is it is saying to the editor, I want you to take this beautiful sprite, and I want you to take that 0, 100% value. I want you to create 12 different states, equal points along that measurement. And I want you to hop between them. So it's not running straight down, it's hopping along till it reaches 100%. That's how steps works. And that's the thing that when I saw it, I was like, I can animate with that. Thank you very much. All those years I spent learning CSS and people paid me no mind. Ha ha. Little did they know I was secretly planning my animation escape. All right. So, cutouts. Cutouts are another labor-saving device invented by, you guessed it, the animation industry. But this time it was not Disney that invented it. In fact, Disney very much protested when, back in, I think it was the 1960s, Hanna-Barbera realized, hey, there was another gold rush back in the 1960s. All of these smaller animation studios realized that kids like cartoons. If we could make cartoons super fast and not just be making theatrical release films of cartoons, we could make a profit on this. How can we make this affordable? But as I just told you, animation is labor intensive. Oh my God, it's such a pain in the ass. So how are they gonna cut that out? A lot of people tried a lot of different stupid things. There's this one thing where they like cut out the mouths on the characters and just have like a picture and somebody's mouth superimposed on it. It looks super creepy. But Hanna-Barbera struck a winning combination with something called cutouts. And you might remember from back in your childhood years that the Flintstones, Yogi Bear, they all had a very clear delineation between their head and their body. Yogi Bear had a collar. There's a really cool article I linked to in this. When you go home and you look at these slides, you can go listen to the video that they put up. I'll just describe it right here, but basically the head for the person was separated from the body so that they could just animate the head and not worry about animating the body through so many poses. It saved a lot of time. You can break it down even further, and you can separate the head out into like a major shape with different mouths and different eyes, and then you can combine them all to create something that's much smaller than the assets you had to build. It's a lot more static, but luckily humans' brains looks for causation in everything, so you can trick them half the time. So, cutouts. Labor-saving device or scourge of the world. Disney seemed to think that cutouts were going to be the end of the art of, and Warner Bros. Actually, you know, Looney Tunes, they don't use cutouts. They're beautiful, but at the same time, Hanna-Barbera was highly profitable. So let's take a look at some of these. You'll have to pardon me. I'll need to skip ahead a little bit to this one, as there's a really good example in here. Yeah, you should come over here. Well, I don't know that we need this now, man. Here we go. Here we go. All right. Watch this. Watch Barney's mouth and his eyes. Look at how little they're moving. But when they had to actually look overhead, it was horribly drawn. It was just like, painful to watch. Oh, the Flintstones, they tried to avoid drawing the, you're good. You can go sit down, Minion. The Flintstones tried to avoid awkward traditional keyframe animation so much. It was just too much for their little hearts, I suppose. So yeah, this is totally the video I was telling you guys about. It's fun. He speaks faster than I do. So how do you do that with CSS? Well, you use sprites. It's all sprites. Gaming uses sprites. We should thank gaming for that. I feel like there's some echo coming. So this, you may have noticed at the very end of the music video, Tuna comes out and he's actually goes from this bright look to kind of a more of a sneaky face. It's a very subtle thing, but I wanted him to change his expression. And I didn't feel like drawing 3 different cats because I'd just drawn 12 of them. More of them if you look at the entire sprite, but at that time I'd drawn at least 12. So I was like, I'm just gonna cut his face out. I'm sorry, Tuna. I'm just gonna cut his face out and I'll change that 3 times. And as you can see here, it doesn't even look like it should be there. It's really awkward looking, but it works. Let me show you how I did it. I look forward to the day. Oh, there he is. Look at him with his wiggly eyes. Isn't he cute? He's the cutest. Sorry, should not be going on about how cute my kitty is. So anyway, as you can see, this is a tuna div, and inside it he's got an expression div. And if we inspect our element, you will see that his expression is sitting directly over his face. And all I'm doing, clever the thing that I was when I made this, all that I'm doing is I'm taking his expression, and it has the same background. It's positioned. Hang on. I keep forgetting you got the pointer. This is new. I just got this because I was like, if you're a professional speaker, Rachel, you need a professional speaker's pointer. Yeah. So I got that. Anyway, as you can see, the animation is Smirk, and Smirk's got some kind of funky values down here because I had a really funky looking sprite. You saw that. That was kind of nasty, but it works. It works. You just gotta do your math. So anyway, and yeah, I just have it run through that a certain amount forever. So it's the same principle as the walk cycle. It's just using a sprite on top of a larger image. Start. I actually don't remember why I put that there, but start and end are difficult to describe. The default is to use end. This is the awkward thing, and I'm totally glossing over it because we could take another 15 minutes talking about it, but there are these 2 arguments you can pass to the steps, the steps transition timing function, that basically it cannibalizes one of the frames like a mother hamster. And so you can tell it which one you want to sacrifice. Do you want to cannibalize the first one or you want to cannibalize the last one? The default is end. I have good luck with that. But for this particular one, I set it to use start because if I did end, it would probably look weird. Yeah. It's less cool. It doesn't go all the way to the end. There we go. And that is why there are 4 states down here. That is something fun to experiment with. You have to go make your own piece with it. I had to find my way to understand it. You'll have to find yours. All right, scene transitions. Any My Little Pony fans out there? Okay, you think you guys, okay, I can see that you came to this talk because you want to learn more about animation. You want to be indoctrinated in the world of magic that is animation. So this is My Little Pony's Friendship is Magic. Yeah, you should go watch it tonight because it's all Flash. Flash is now going to be used just to make cartoons. Isn't that fascinating? Good? Bad? I don't know. But anyway, yes, this is made with Flash. But we're not using Flash today. This is just really cute scene transition. So scene transitions, how do I say this? I wrote an article for a list apart about animation and the future of user interfaces. And I said that there's no natural corollary for transitions. They don't exist in the wild. And somebody rightly corrected me in the comments and said they do happen in the wild, Rachel. Transitions do happen. You close your eyes, you walk from a dark room to a light room. These transitions happen all the time, and they're just stylized and taken to extremes in film and cartoons. And it turns out that, yeah, that's actually pretty dead on. So transitions actually are super useful when you're building a user interface in software as well. Because if you're trying to move somebody from thinking about how they're working on, say, reading a document or searching for a document, it will be a completely different mindset from what it will be when they're writing a document. If you've ever used Evernote on an iOS device, you've seen a really good set of transitions already. Evernote has one of the best set of task transitions I've ever seen in software. In fact, I often argue that one of the reasons people keep talking about how wonderful and usable iOS things are is because iOS made it so easy for people to put animations in their user interfaces. Evernote lets people shift seamlessly from, okay, I'm writing something now. All right, now I'm looking at something, I'm searching for something, or now I'm reading something. Those are three very different states, and they should probably be storyboarded out and handed off to three different teams who come together to work on the transitions together. Point is, the transitions pop you out of that mind state into a new one and let you know where you belong and where you're going. But we're talking about cartoons, not user interfaces, so let's watch some cartoons again. Now, in cartoons, scene transitions signal to audiences a change in mood, time, or location, or sometimes just a commercial break. And then there would be an advertisement for cookies. That's from Ed, Edd and Eddy, which no longer runs. I did not even watch it, but I thought it was a very good scene transition. And because that is Flash, I have to use that. All right. So I like to think of transition, like a full-on scene transition, is kind of like a period or a paragraph. It marks change in thought and a change of mind. Now, this little thing I made here, once again, you can do this using CSS. This is a little project I worked on with a Russian creator. And as you can see, that's a scene transition, that wormhole cut. And there's a fade out here. There are a bunch of different transitions used in this little thing. It's a game, and you get to click your way around. Oh, that shouldn't happen. I better put a new CSS property that prevents that from happening. And you can turn things on and off. It's cute. We'll look at it later. And oh, look, steps. Look, you guys, steps. So yeah, you can bring all these things together really fun. And the way this is moving, I'll go ahead and describe this for you, is that back here, there's this huge div with a background image on it. And it's got all these different room divs on top of it. And when you click one of the arrows, it changes the class of the containing body element, which puts this underlying div in a different location. It moves it. It's got a different position when it has a different, like, you're in room blah class. And that movement has a transition set on it. But that's not a scene transition. That's just an interesting use of transitions. And I just wanted to show off. So that wormhole you saw that looked so cool, I banged my head against a wall for days trying to figure out. This is like the first project I took on after I quit my job, and I was like, I'm just gonna do this and go crazy. So I teamed up with her, and I said, lady, what is it that I can, I love your work. You've been doing these great interactive comics, but I notice they're all in Flash, and I wanna do something cool with you that will work on a tablet. Let's use some HTML5. And she said, that's great. I've got this thing, and I don't know how to do the action scripting for it because it's too complicated, so you do it. And she handed this whole thing to me. It took me about a week to make. Again, I was doing all this stuff I'd never done before. And I promised myself that at no point would I tell her, I can't do that. It's like, no, you're gonna stick it out. And I swear, I spent 2 nights beating my head against the wall trying to figure out how to do that wormhole. Because she would send me these little swifts of, now it should look like this. And you didn't get her eyes right. She looks like she's blinking. It needs to be more like this. And she would send me these little videos, and that's how we would communicate the finer parts of this. And I didn't want to tell her, I can't do your silly wormhole. And I banged my head against the wall, and I learned, as with so many things that I have learned doing this, aside from the steps, when it comes to CSS animations and transitions, the silly, stupid technique that you discarded the first time you thought about it is probably the one you're going to end up using. So you should just use it. Your gut instinct is probably right. You can't transition a mask. You can't transition a radial gradient, but you can transition a background image's scale. So I created this background image with a hole cut out in it, and I layered it on top of the whole darn thing and scaled it to the right size. So I'm genius. No, but she didn't get to see the 10 hours I sank trying to make it work any other way. Now I don't try to be cute anymore. So parallax. Parallax is pretty cool. You've probably had to implement some parallax, haven't you? I see some nodding heads. Was it Scroller or Stellar or some other? Yeah, I've done parallax too. In fact, I specifically made a particular thing that we're going to look at in a few mo's. Just because everybody at these events kept asking me, how do you do parallax? And I was like, parallax is shit, you shouldn't use it. And they're like, but I have this designer. I'm like, fine, I will find a reason to use parallax and I will do it so that I can tell you it's shit and you shouldn't do that, but here's how I did it. So I don't like parallax, except in very rare cases. And the reason for that is that parallax kind of costs you a lot to use and you don't get a whole lot out of it. There aren't a lot of reasons for you to use it in web development aside from flair. And flair is great, but when you're moving into an apartment, you don't have a lot of money, you're going to buy the plain white pillowcase instead of the super embroidered fancy one from West Elm that you can't afford. That's how it works. It's the same thing when people are using their websites. Are you going to stop everything so you can give them the fancy sequence pillowcase, or are you just going to give them the damn pillowcase so they can go home and sleep? This is that sort of thing. You just economy. At this point, we're talking about an economy for these users. They don't care about your sequence. So parallax is something we like to get our panties in a bunch about, but it's actually not as important as you think it is, except in very rare cases, and I will show you one of them. But this is actually the machine that makes parallax happen in cartoons, back in the old days before it was all done on computers. Even 2D is done on computers these days, by the way. But back when we did cell animation, this was another picture I took at the Disney Family Museum while I was out interviewing in Silicon Valley. I didn't actually take any of the jobs, but this was totally worth my time getting these photos for this talk. So this was created by Iwerks. And Iwerks, by the way, was kind of the Wozniak to Disney's jobs. He worked for Disney. They had to break. Went off and he's like, I'm going to start my own studio. And he was all into art cartoons. And everybody was like, we don't like your cartoons. They're very arty and you're being very cool, but this is bullshit. We don't want to pay you for them. So he went back to Disney and they wouldn't look each other in the eyes until like he died. And it was so much drama. It's awesome. It's like reading a soap opera. But point is, he built a lot of really cool inventions that Disney used, and Disney coveted and wouldn't let anybody else use them. The original peg and slot that people used to animate, that was open source. It was created by, I think, a French animator, and he just released it into the wild so that all animators everywhere could use it. Not Disney. They made this thing, the multi-pane camera, and by golly, it's a Disney contraption. So it was, of course, patented all to hell. But this was what was used to create those beautiful openings to Bambi and the visuals of over London in Peter Pan, and a couple of sweeping forest vistas in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Basically, the camera's up here, the background is here, another background painted on glass is here, and another background painted on glass is here. And they move the camera closer, and as they move it closer, they move these. And the ones on the bottom are painted with completely different paints from the ones on the top because the glass changes the color as you go deeper. And I told you this was all taking off right around the time of the Depression, right? Well, they were so damn poor at one point, especially during the Depression and then during the war years, that they took all those beautiful backgrounds from Bambi and such, and they'd scrape the paint off of them and reuse the glass. There are only a couple of those backgrounds that still exist to this day because of that. Fun fact, you can tell your kids. So let's take a look at some parallax in animation. So parallax is when multiple background layers are moved at different speeds to imitate how views change when moving. Anybody here grow up in the mountains? Visit the mountains? Love the mountains? I was. You know, when you're driving in the mountains, the things in front of you are zooming past, but when you look off in the distance, the mountains barely move at all. That's a real life example of parallax. And up until that camera was invented, it was nearly impossible to do that in animation. I will take that mic now, Micah. Oh, your name matches your job. Get it in there, man. So this is, as you can see, there's some opening parallax here, but it's about to get super, super going. And this is totally The Last Unicorn. It is. It's really beautiful. Not the best cartoon I've ever seen, but it's just beautiful to watch for the animation superiority. So yeah, things in the foreground moving at a different rate from things in the background. That's what the designers want when they use it. They're trying to get majesty. And the horses. So there's a really blatant example coming up. We're going to hang on for just the blatancy of it. Hi, Mia Farrow. And they're speaking German, so you'll pay attention to the scene and not pay attention to the cartoon. There, you see, you've got people moving in the foreground, things moving in the background. Parallax. Voila. You know what was great? I actually was giving this in front of a German crowd, so I pretended I did it on purpose just for them. All right, we talked about the multi-pane camera. Oh, and it was totally invented in 1933. That's right. So here's my example. Once again, you can do it in animation, you can do it with CSS. Here's the example I made. Here's Tuna walking in a field, and it's being glitchy because this is a long cord. But anyway, you can see that things in the foreground are moving way faster than the things in the background. So what is going on here? Well, this is a foreground div in front here. Tuna and the background behind him exist on this midground div up here. I'm on CodePen, by the way. Got CodePen peeps in the house? Guys, use the CodePen. And this background div here is actually, it has multiple background images on it. And I'm animating all of their background positions at different rates. That's the magic of it. So how exactly does that work? Let's take a look at that CSS. Got the foreground, and we got the midground, and now we got the background. The background's got, oh, come here. Oh, it's super long, and it's sticking to my keys. But as you can see, there are a lot of URLs here. I think exactly 5 of them. And it has an animation, parallax BG, and it's using linear as its transition timing function. And every 40 seconds, they all go back to their initial states. These are how you stack that. Oh, it's super long. So yes, as you can see, those are a lot of different background positions that I have so wonderfully tagged together. And they all go from a 0%, where they're all off, all the way off to one side, to 0%, sorry, negative percent pixels to zeros. How exactly this looks as awesome as it does is down to this lovely little diagram I made for you. Things in the front are longer, so they move faster than the background images in the background, which of course move slower. So every 40 seconds, they complete their rotations, kind of like how planets revolve around different parts of the solar system. You can do it with 3D transforms too. I'm not going to show you because we started late. So cushioning, using timing functions. This is a lovely little visual of how they all work. But I think it's much better to show them than to describe them. In animation, what we call transition timing functions are actually called cushioning, and it refers to the rate of change that an animation takes place over. And for instance, linear, I told you earlier, is a constant rate of change. Well, there are also other kinds of rates of change. There's ease in, there's ease out, there's ease in, out, cubic Bezier, you can define your own one with that. And the best way to show you is this. So this is linear. It's a constant rate of change, and as you can see, it looks very fake. It doesn't look real at all. It's because it's not obeying the laws of physics. Something accelerating goes faster than slows down as physics gravity catches up to it. In animation, we tend to exaggerate things so that there'll be a little pause when he reaches the top, and then it'll come down super fast. There you go. So let's see how we would do something like this. Let me demo how you do this with CSS. This is a little a little toy I like to give students. It's a roll a ball with your hand. How this works is that the ball and the hand, I'm using the long form for the transitions here. The ball has a margin on its left side, and it grows. It's a 300 pixel margin, and we're using ease out. Now, whenever you hear ease, sometimes it can be hard to wrap your mind around what ease means, but in animation, we call it slow. So it's slow out. That means end slow. Watch what happens when you change it to linear. Very unnatural, very boring, very sad. Ease starts, speeds, slows. So it starts slow, it speeds up, and it ends slow. And ease in should start slow and go fast. And it accelerates, but it comes to a dead stop at the end. It would look great if we put a wall over here. In fact, hang on a minute. I think we can totally make this look realistic right there. Let's do it again. In animation, it often helps to begin with your end state and work your way back, at least with CSS animation. So watch here, it's speeding up. It's got a little engine in there. It's accelerating. Acceleration off. If you want to show something being accelerated, something like a car or something man-made going faster, you would probably use ease in, starting slow and ending abruptly. But for a ball that's being slowed down by friction and the effects of gravity, slow out, ease out, that's exactly what you want to use. It looks very natural. I also mentioned cubic Bezier. You can go to this site also by Leveroo called cubicbezier.com or something. Yeah, cubic-bezier.com. Wow, how'd she get that one? And you can actually compare them side by side. So here's linear, its constant rate of change. You can make your own, copy it, place it into that transition timing function. Super fun. So why animating in the browser kicks ass? It's familiar. You already know these tools. You don't need to learn a new user interface or a new language for it. You use CSS every day. You use JavaScript every day. You can do this. It's nothing you haven't done before. I can do it. You can do it. It's the future. Even if when I was making these, I totally justified them to everybody I knew who is like, what are you doing? I was like, this is building skills in animation, see? Now I understand exactly how all of these transition timing functions work much better than you. So totally worth it for the deeper understanding. It was fun. I mean, you should enjoy your work, right? You should be able to make things you enjoy. And lastly, content is, whenever I'm at these conferences, there's always somebody giving a talk about content. And I feel like when people at these conferences talk about content, usually they're just talking about text with the odd video or picture thrown into it. And I'm a cartoonist. If you've ever tried to make a comic for somebody who's just written the story out and it's just all narration and it's horrible, you just feel like you're illustrating a children's book because it's all text and you're just putting pictures with the text. Oh, they're telling us to get out. But I like to say that content is so much more than copy. Content is the actual experience. You can use CSS to do so much more than just sculpt how text should look. You can use it to tell stories. So this is just the beginning. With these skills, you can build all kinds of really cool things, and I'm going to show you some of them. You're not free to go yet. This is the fun part where we bring it all together. This one doesn't require a microphone, Micah. I used a custom cubic Bezier for the little drop there. This is Alice in Videoland, and I got commissioned to do this by Adobe Inspire Mag. Back, they wanted to find to get more young designers interested in using HTML and CSS to tell stories and do cooler things. And you can see that all of these different things. Here's steps. There's a transition. Look, more transitions. Moving things across page. Super cool. Oh, what's that? What's going on? Oh, I guess we should click on that. Let's go down the rabbit hole. It was just a modern retelling of Alice in Wonderland. And look, guys, pay close attention. I told you, I found a use for parallax. She's moving toward the bottom of the page, and she's changing while she's doing it. It's the only time I've ever actually wanted to use parallax. I use Scroller, Skrollr, if you're interested. And if you're actually interested in figuring out how this works, I wrote 2 articles detailing all of the nitty-gritty, and there's a GitHub repo. So if you visit my site, rachelnabors.com, there are links. You can find it. All right, so let's see what other cool things I wanted to show you. Yeah, new cool things. That's bullshit, Rachel. Okay, so this is the most recent project I've worked on. Oh, check it out down here. Look at this, guys. Steps. The most recent project I worked on with the lovely Russian lady I told you about. And it even can play music. Somebody else did that. This really cool person here. I feel totally jealous that Daria drew her, and I had to make my own avatar. Like, that's not fair. You made her look so cool. Anyway, so we built this together, and it's actually just a little drag and drop game using the HTML5 drag and drop API. It's fun. It's cute. Oh my gosh. Look, we drag this here. We drop it. But check out how we use little transitions and subtle things that make it so much more enjoyable for the user. All right. And then one last fun thing to show you that I recently finished. Code pen, yarn loader. Yes, the yarn loader. So yeah, the simple ones are the most fun. This is SVG images, but I'm not using any special JavaScript to manipulate the SVG here. What's happening is that there's this big div called rollout, and I give it it starts with no width at all, but it has this background image of that yarn, right? And the yarn ball is contained within it. Yeah, I'm just going to show you with the inspector. So let's watch it grow. So that's how it's working. And the image is got a transform on it, a CSS transform that sets it to spinning. And my lovely husband is here, over there. I won't use the laser pointer on him. I hear it's bad for eyes. But he pointed out when he first saw me working on this that I could use a formula with pi and whatnot to figure out exactly how many degrees it needed to roll to look realistic. I totally did that. And I also used a completely custom cubic Bezier. I got to show off the cubic Bezier because it's one of those things you're like, I'll never need that. And then one day you're like, oh, I need it right now. I made my own cubic Bezier curve so it would roll across the screen realistically. So this is how you can combine CSS in cool and unusual ways. Once you understand how it works, you're suddenly a lot less dependent on things like video or animated GIFs. You can just take a couple of images, put them together, slap a new code paint on them, and voila, it's a loader. Aren't you guys proud of me? And the one last cool thing I'll show you, I told you guys about cutouts, right? We're going to visit my website. It's like going to grandma's house. So this thing over here, everybody thinks this is a GIF. This is not a GIF. It's actually a bunch of sprites. If you'll notice how her expression changes, this would be a gigantic GIF. It would probably take me like, I don't know, a whole megabyte to create it. But this is just a bunch of little pings that I'm using different, it's a bunch of sprites, and I'm using steps to go through them and create this kind of angry loader, as I call it. When I made it, it's because everybody was like, we're making pure CSS loaders, and they'd have these little circles, and I was like, I'm gonna make pure CSS loader. Pure CSS loader, you guys. So yes, I think it did make a CodePen best of CSS loaders list once. I was very proud of that, very honored. So yep, if you're interested in checking out these slides again, you can find them on my site all the way down here, because I need to redesign my site now that I've got all this stuff here, way more stuff than I need. Under slides, a bunch of other cool slides too. There's the URL. You can find more examples at my website, rachelnabors.com. I also have a screencast, which I didn't plug at all, but if you're interested in it, theinfinitecanvas.com. I do a screencast right now about once a month where I go through what I'm working on and interview cool people who are working on similar things. It's super fun. Hope you'll check it out. If you want to take my masterclass workshop that I only give in Europe right now, it's on Front End Masters. And Front End Masters is a really cool site. It's kind of like Treehouse in that it has a monthly fee, but for 1 month you get to like go take Douglas Crockford's best of JavaScript bits. It's super awesome. But if you're not the kind of person who learns from online videos, and some of the stuff I talked about tonight was just a little bit over your head, you're going to be interested in Val Head's workshop. She is coming to the Triangle. She's going to be giving a workshop with Refresh PDX, and I talked with her to get you guys a 10% off coupon. You just use the code SASSY. I'm not getting a kickback for this. We're not even really friends, so it's not even like she's going to buy me a beer or anything. I'm just doing this because I thought somebody out here might be like, well, that's really cool, but I want to learn more, Rachel, and I can't fly to Europe to take any of your cool workshops. Help. Now you know, Val Head is coming to town, and she is an excellent educator. I can confirm this. So thank you guys so much. I'm very happy to have finally moved my butt to Portland. I look forward to calling you my neighbors and coworkers in the future. Say hi anytime you want to talk about animations. Before I let you go, I brought mini comics. Let's do a pop quiz. Raise your hand if you know the answer. First person who raises their hand with the right answer wins the comic. What was the name of my feline sidekick? They all went up at the same time. I'll go from the front. You, eager beaver. Tuna, correct, sir. Please select which one of the wonderful mini comics you would like.
One with tuna in it.
He's on all of them.
Oh, okay.
There you go. All right, all right, all right. What is the original name for transition timing functions? Bing, 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 cushioning. Correct, sir. It doesn't like me. Which one would you like? All right. It's a good one. Everybody loves that one. Staying away from you.
I'll take it.
You'll take it?
I'll walk it.
Okay, good point, good point. Well done. Okay, let me think. That's the last question I want to ask you guys about. What is the name of the timing function I use for walk cycles? You in the front, with the circle on your shirt. You got it. If you'd be so kind, Micah. And I have one up here that's missing a cover. If anybody wants it, I'm sorry I didn't check before I left. These are supposed to protect the cover, but it was hiding its flaws. So the first person to come up and shake my hand afterward can take it. All right, thank you guys so much. You've been awesome.
One more big hand for Rachel. Thank you. Awesome. We are running a little bit late, so I want to try and wrap things up, but she's going to be around for a bit. If you have more questions, shake her hand, all those kind of great things. I want to try and wrap things up before we head out. A couple things. We are certainly looking for people to speak next month. If you're interested in doing some larger presentation a la this, we'd love to have you. If you'd like to give more a 5, 10, 15-minute presentation on something SaaS or front end, that's awesome. We can string a few together and put an event together. But that would be cool. Just ping me, catch me afterwards. I can stick around for a few minutes. I actually have to run out. Catch me on Twitter and all that kind of good stuff. The other thing we like to do, since we're here, we're all about equipping people, but also finding new jobs and also finding employers, people to work for them. So is there anyone here that works at a place or representative of a place that is hiring and wants to give a shout out? Bloom wants to at least say something.
This is probably the most inappropriate place to ask this, but I need a Java, not the script kind of Java developer. Do you know anybody? Probably over the age of 50. I don't know. Okay, if you do, come talk to me. This is Chris. I'm at phase 2.
Hi, my name is Matt, and I just got the good fortune to get a new job, and I need to backfill my spot. I'm at a place called House of Antique Hardware, and they need a front-end developer who is a bit of a jack of all trades. They're moving from a NetSuite system, hopefully into a system that's divorced from that and standards-based. So if you'd like to get some information, please come. I'll be here for a moment, and I'll give you my card. Thanks very much.
All right.
Hi, my name's Josh, and I'm with Drupal.org. So if you're interested in contributing back to an amazing open source project, I'm currently in the process of hiring UX and designers to work on one of the biggest open source projects there's to work on right now. So please join me.
And was it like 4.7 or something? Remember the version? Ooh, old school. All right, anyone else? We're good to go? All right, well, thanks again for coming. Thanks again, one more round of applause for Rachel Nabors. And remember, the first person to shake your hand will get that book. So catch us next week. Follow us on Twitter at PDXSATS for information on next month's meetup. And thanks again for coming. Drink some more beer. Not too much.